The night of August 4th, 1964, was dark, chaotic, and filled with a deafening storm. On board the USS Maddox, a destroyer on patrol in the Gulf of Tonkin, the radar screens lit up with enemy contacts. Evasive maneuvers were ordered. Depth charges were dropped. The crew fired on unseen targets, convinced they were under attack. For hours, they fought a phantom battle in the dead of night. But here's the unsettling truth. There was no enemy, no torpedoes, no attack, nothing but the storm and the static of a faulty radar. Yet this phantom battle would become the cornerstone of American policy. This one night, a night of confusion, of mistakes, and of bad weather, would be used to justify a massive escalation of the Vietnam War, plunging a nation into a conflict that would define a generation. This is the story of the Tonkin Gulf Incident, an event that changed the course of history based on a lie. By 1964, America's involvement in Vietnam was a slow, simmering pot, not a boiling war. We had advisors, military aid, and a desire to contain communism, but no large-scale combat troops. The USS Maddox, a destroyer loaded with sophisticated intelligence equipment, was sent into the Gulf of Tonkin, a body of water off the coast of North Vietnam. Its mission was simple: gather electronic intelligence, monitor North Vietnamese coastal radar, and show the flag. But its presence was more than just a passive mission. It was a clear and deliberate signal. Unbeknownst to the American public, the U.S. was also secretly supporting a series of South Vietnamese commando raids against North Vietnamese targets. These raids were codenamed Operation 34A. The Maddox's presence in the Gulf was an intimidation tactic, a show of force, and a tool to gather intelligence on how the North Vietnamese would respond to these attacks. A deadly game of cat and mouse was underway. The first contact was very real. On the afternoon of August 2, 1964, the USS Maddox was steaming in international waters when it was approached by 3 North Vietnamese patrol boats. The patrol boats, believing the Maddox was an escort for the commando raids, launched a torpedo attack. Commander John Herrick, captain of the Maddox, ordered his crew to fire. What followed was a swift, chaotic skirmish. The Maddox, a much larger and better equipped ship, easily repelled the attack. 2 of the patrol boats were severely damaged, and the Maddox suffered only a single bullet hole from a machine gun, with no American casualties. President Johnson immediately issued a statement condemning the attack, framing it as an unprovoked act of aggression. 2 days later, on the night of August 4th, the Maddox was again on patrol, this time joined by a second destroyer, the USS Turner Joy. A powerful tropical storm had blown in, making visibility near zero. On the radar screens, a nervous young officer saw a blip, then another. They appeared to be coming fast, closing in. He reported that they were under attack. Over the next several hours, the 2 ships maneuvered wildly. They fired hundreds of rounds of ammunition, dropped depth charges, and reported torpedoes in the water. One report claimed 22 torpedoes were fired, but nothing hit, nothing was seen. Commander Herrick himself grew suspicious, radioing back to Washington. Review of action makes many reported contacts and torpedoes appear doubtful. Later, another message said, entire action leaves many doubts. The reports from the Tonkin Gulf were conflicting, but they were also a political goldmine. As Herrick was sending his message of doubt, Washington was already receiving the first, more frantic reports. Secretary of Defense McNamara presented President Johnson with a narrative of a second, unprovoked attack against American forces. He omitted the contradicting information. That very night, President Johnson went on national television to address the nation. He spoke of an unprovoked attack and a deliberate escalation by the North Vietnamese. He vowed that repeated acts of violence against the armed forces of the United States must be met not only with alert defense, but with a positive reply. 2 days later, on August 7, 1964, the U.S. Congress overwhelmingly passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. It gave President Johnson the authority to take any measures he deemed necessary to repel attacks and prevent further aggression. The vote was a near unanimous 416-0 in the House and 88-2 in the Senate. The resolution was, in effect, a blank check for war. It gave the president unprecedented power to escalate a foreign conflict without a formal declaration of war. The Vietnam War, which had been a limited commitment, began its long, tragic escalation. The The first combat troops landed in Vietnam in 1965. It was only years later, as historians and journalists reviewed declassified documents, that the full truth came out. The second attack never happened. The crew of the Maddox, operating in a storm and on high alert, had simply misinterpreted their own sonar and radar readings. The Gulf of Tonkin incident stands as a chilling reminder of how easily the truth can be manipulated in the pursuit of political goals. The fear of an unseen enemy, combined with the pressure of a political agenda, created a phantom battle that had all too real consequences, shaping a generation and changing the course of American history forever. If you like this video, and if you are a history fan, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Time Echoes for more interesting history facts. Thank you for watching.